Gridiron Grinder! Hut hut hike!
All right, it's Friday night, Gridiron Grinder time. I'm Ryan. With me, as always, is my buddy James. Just a couple of dudes hanging out, talking about what's going on in the NFL each week. This is episode 87. And for tonight, we're going to start things off with Name That Stadium, like we always do. Then we're going to talk about the news from this past week. There was quite a bit going on. After that, we're going to play a little game of free agency matchmaker for the teams in the AFC. And last but not least, we'll close things off with our question of the week. So, with all that being said, how's it going tonight, James?
It's going good. How's it going with you?
It's going good, man. I was dragging for a little bit here these last couple hours, just like started hitting the wall. But of course, as soon as we start talking football, man, that second wind is starting to kick in. So I'm feeling good again.
Know the feeling.
All right, so let's do Name That Stadium. For anybody who's watching, this is a part of the show where, as you can see, James is out there traveling the country. Every week he's got a different stadium in his background, and we're just kind of making it a little bit of a game here. If you think you know what stadium that is, hit us up in our comments section, and the first person to get the answer correct, they'll get a special shout out next week's show. And so, James, I know where you're at this week, and it's kind of a dead giveaway, but we'll see if we get any takers. Why don't you tell us where you were at last week, man?
Last week I was at FedEx Field in Washington. Going into the week last week, well, last week we were talking about NFC franchise tags, but I thought that the Commanders now were going to be the first team to trade for a quarterback during the week after the Rodgers decision, whether he's being traded or whatever. So I thought the Commanders were going to be the first one to trade, and I actually had been hearing a lot of rumors that they were very heavy in like the Russell Wilson sweepstake, like offering 3 first-round picks for Wilson plus. So I kind of thought that that's where Wilson was going to end up.
hmm Yeah, you can't knock them for trying. I'm sure they were wanting to get more than Wentz, but um, here's the thing. If their defense can get back to form, kind of like the way it was, not necessarily last season, but the year before, um, we know that they've got the running back, Antonio Gibson, he's good. They've got Terry McLaurin at wide receiver. I think, that team is not that far away from being a solid playoff team if they can just add a couple right pieces in the offseason, whether it's free agency or the draft. And, I think Wentz can do that if they put enough around him. And they've got the building blocks. They've just got to finish it off.
Yeah, I hate the trade. I don't think Wentz is much of an upgrade over Taylor Heineke or Tyler Heineke or whatever the fuck his
hmm
name is. Does it equate to more wins? No. They gave up a few draft picks, but they give up a second, a third, second and 2/3 for Wentz, which second, third pick could be upgraded to a second round pick
Yeah.
for Wentz, and they're paying his full salary. What is it, 28 million? I mean, it's not that much of an upgrade for what they gave up. Yeah, Wentz is more talented, but Wentz also chokes in big games.
So,
And
all right. So with Russell Wilson getting traded and Rodgers staying in Green Bay, what would you have preferred, Jimmy G over Wentz, or what's the alternative for him that they could have maybe taken a swing at?
it's not as much as there was an alternative. I just think they overpaid in the trade.
I got you. Okay.
Like if they were like if you're giving up all those picks, yeah, they're getting Wentz and a second round pick back, but if you're giving up all those picks, then Indy has to eat some of that $28 million salary.
Yeah, because I guess at first I didn't think the picks were that bad because there wasn't a first rounder involved, but I guess now that I'm thinking about it, they could have made a move after a guy like Jameis Winston.
Hmm.
And really, how far off is he from Wentz?
You have
And you
Jameis Winston in free agency. You have Mitchell Trubisky. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not saying Mitchell Trubisky is better than Wentz, but he could have been a stopgap and you draft a guy this year. You
Yeah, and you don't
have
have to burn some picks. Yeah.
yeah. I thought it was a losing trade for the command for. Uh, it's going to take me a while to get used to it. The
Yeah, the
Commanders,
Commanders. Yeah.
and I thought for the Colts, it kind of sucks that they gave up. What did they give up for Wentz? Didn't they give up like a first round,
They gave
like
up a
a
first
first round
rounder,
or
man.
second round, first round and second round, or first and a third, something like that,
Yeah.
for Wentz, and then you turn around and you barely get a extra second round pick.
Yeah, I think that was some of that was an emotional decision. The owner was pissed the way the season ended, and I think they were just like, as quick as they could get rid of him, they were going to do it because, my opinion is that yeah, it was up and down, but he actually had a fairly efficient year. It just fell apart at the end. And, you know, you, we talked about it as the season went on. He basically didn't have an off season. And, then he had issues with the offensive line in front of him. And they started out of the gate with like 5 brutal weeks. And so it just, I thought for sure they were going to at least give him one more season. But I think that the way they lost to Jacksonville and missed the playoffs, they just said, fuck it, get him out of here. But to me, I'm looking at it as is it a, don't cut your nose off to spite your face kind of thing, because now they got to get somebody in there. And I've heard maybe they're going to go after Jimmy G, and that's fine. But then I wonder, is Jimmy G really that much better than Wentz?
Right,
It's
but if they had Jimmy G last year, I don't think they lose the Jacksonville game. So right there, they're in the playoffs. He's better than Wentz.
well,
Jimmy G doesn't necessarily choke in games like that. And if Wentz in a big game, he chokes.
yeah, Jimmy G waits for the playoffs to choke, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, um, yeah, I guess hey, he would have got him there, and it would have been short lived. But yeah, no, hey, I hear what you're saying. Um, all right, well, here, let's hang on to some of that. We can talk about it more as we go. Let's get to our recap of the past week. And so, James, this past week, there was a ton of stuff that happened in the NFL. Just real quick, I'll run everybody through the franchise tag situation since our last 2 episodes were speculating who might get tagged. Now we know the Bengals, they tagged safety Jesse Bates. The Browns, they tagged tight end David Njoku. That one I was kind of surprised about because, they do have, 2 other decent tight ends. And, Njoku, they've kind of always talked about him not really living up to his potential, but that's okay. When he plays well, he looks really good. And so it just, they want all those tight ends in that offense, and that's fine for them. The Cowboys ended up tagging Dalton Schultz. They got some work to do with the cap, but I did see today that they cut Blake Jarwin, so probably prudent for them to hang on to Schultz. The Packers, they tagged Devontae Adams. You know, I think everybody was expecting that. No surprise there. The Jags tagged Cam Robinson. I think that was a smart move. Try to have some stability on that offensive line. And they're losing Andrew Norwell, however you say his name. The Chiefs, they tagged Orlando Brown, another obvious kind of move because they just traded for him not all that long ago. The Dolphins, they tagged Mike Gesicki, solid. He's one of the not like elite tight ends in the league, but he's definitely in that top tier somewhere. And if he had better quarterback play, he could flirt with like that next level down when you look at, you got like the Kittles and the Kelseys and Mark Andrews. He's like just a step behind those guys, in my opinion. The Patriots were expected, I think publicly expected, to tag J.C. Jackson. They did not. And so he'll hit free agency. And then the Buccaneers, they tagged Chris Godwin, which I think you were saying, this is 2 in a row. Didn't they tag him last year?
Yeah, they tagged him last year and they tagged him again this year, and I was a little off on the amount. His tag value is a little bit higher than so is Devontae Adams, because I think it's 120% of the previous year's salary, not the top 5 average because the 120% is higher for both Adams and Godwin, because Adams' tag value is at 20 million.
Yeah, I guess it makes me wonder how's that calculated because Godwin's at 19.179 million and Adams they're saying is at 20.415 million.
Yeah, I think because it's like 120%, 110% of the previous year's salary, or whatever the computed value is.
Okay.
I'm looking really quick.
Yeah. And so Devontae Adams wasn't tagged last year. He was just coming off of a big contract.
Yeah.
Okay.
So come on, load.
We're sucking up all your bandwidth, man. It's these
Yeah.
video calls.
Ex-
Well,
the
here,
hell?
while you're looking, or did you find it?
Okay, here.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's the average of the 5 largest prior year salaries for players at the position, or 120% of the prior year's salary, whichever is greater.
Okay.
So that's why Adams is at 20 million, because his last year's salary was
It was high.
20 divided by 120 versus 19 million last year. Doing some quick math.
Okay. Well, we don't need you to do the math on the fly. That's fine. But yeah, okay. Yeah. No, I get it. And yeah, I mean, hey, either way, I think it was obvious that the pack needed to hang on to Devontae Adams.
17 million.
Godwin, I wasn't as sure about just because of their uncertainty at quarterback, and so
Mhm.
maybe they feel good about getting somebody and they feel like they're going to have production right away. And if that's the case, then I think it was a smart move to hang on to him. I guess we'll wait and see how that shakes out for them. Otherwise, it's risky for that team. Without a quarterback, we just see so many teams fall flat on their faces. It doesn't matter how good the talent is around them sometimes. And so, but that's okay. So, all right. Yeah, that's the franchise tag situation. More than likely, a lot of these guys are going to get some long-term deals, but this is at least a placeholder to keep them on the team. And I want to say that deadline's July 15th normally for the to get the deal, or they got to write out the tag. So
Yeah, it changes every year.
yeah, either way, they got at least 3-4 months to work out some deals. you know, and that gives these teams a lot of time to figure out what they want to do in free agency. What do they want to do in terms of maybe there's like some cap casualties, things that they want to do to clear up some space, re-sign some guys, stack some guaranteed money, manipulate the cap, and then get through the draft. And so, some of these deals might not happen for a couple months, but worst case, these guys tagged them. And then, hypothetically, some of these guys could get traded. It could be a tag and trade situation. Looking at the names, I guess let me say this, James. Looking at all the guys on this list, I could see Godwin being a tag and trade. If they
You know,
can't find a quarterback, I could see him getting traded. I don't see anybody else on this list that I think's a tag and trade candidate. I'm
you
just
might
throwing
be
that out
right.
there because you don't see it happen that often.
You might be right on that. And
I
you were
doubt.
right on the date, July 15th.
Yeah, and I doubt the Browns would do it with Njoku. It seems like an odd tag, but it seems like they want him. Looking at all these other guys, Godwin could be a tag and trade if they don't have a quarterback
Yeah,
because they still got Mike Evans. You think I'm
you know,
crazy? That's all
I
right.
I don't think you're crazy
It's just a stretch.
I think it's a stretch because I think they really like Godwin. I think they want to keep him even if they don't have a quarterback.
And I think they should. I just, it's like, man, until they figure out that quarterback situation, would you be better suited trading and getting some picks and maybe using those picks to help get a quarterback, and then you go back in and it seems like there's so many wide receivers coming out now in the draft, but I hear you. He's been good for them, and yeah, all right. So let's hit some of the other news. And so we talked about Devontae Adams. Okay, that is connected to Aaron Rodgers staying in Green Bay. He signed a 4-year, $100 million deal. Big money, man. Um, I think it's like 50 something million guaranteed. And so,
So so what I'm hearing on that is the deal is actually not signed yet, and
okay. Well, there's
and
always something with Aaron Rodgers, man.
and the reported numbers are not correct.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I don't know what that means, but that's out of Aaron Rodgers' mouth. He hasn't signed a deal yet. He's staying in Green Bay, and the reported numbers are not correct.
Oh, jeez. Well, here we go again. The drama continues.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's just I don't know. He's just basically saying what I think it ties into is he's going to try to give flexibility for Green Bay to get Adams on a long-term deal, and so he's going to try to let them hammer out a deal with Adams and then figure out how he can fit into their salary cap somehow. Like they're like 700 million over the cap anyway, so you
Yeah.
have like 10 void years, and he's only like a $2 million cap hit this year.
Yeah, my thought is that it's great. It's a 4-year deal, but I don't think he goes more than two, to be honest, because the cap situation is going to come calling. Maybe they can get away with it this year, but it seems like they won't be able to do it for more than these next 2 years before it finally becomes a train wreck for them.
Yeah, but like I thought I thought it was a 4-year deal. I honestly thought it ultimately amounted to a 2-year deal. Like I thought it was a 4-year deal with 2 void years. That was
Okay.
reported.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so the way I read it was 4 years, 100 million, and I want to say it was like 53 was guaranteed. And so it was kind of like, okay, well, after two, basically anything could happen.
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, we'll find out. I mean, it sounds like it's a little loosey-goosey. But all right, let's go to the big news, which I think most people are just fucking thrilled about, which is Russell Wilson getting traded to Denver. And James, I was kind of scrambling here for a minute trying to find out the picks that they gave. It was picks and players. I know that Noah Fant was one of them. Shelby Harris was one of them. And I forget, I think there was a third player that also went to Seattle. And then I want to say, what was it, like 2 first rounds and like a fifth or something?
All right, here we go. I actually have the details of the trade right available. So Seattle got Drew Lock, Noah Fant, Shelby Harris, 2022 first round, 2023 first round, 2022 second round, 2023 second round, 2022 fifth round.
Oh, I
The
forgot
Bron-
about the second round picks. Yeah.
the Broncos got Wilson and a 2022 fourth round pick.
It's a blockbuster trade, man. And I think that, you know, when you see trades like this happen, first of all, they're rare,
Mhm.
but then when they do happen, you always wonder, did one of the teams get fleeced? And like and we'll talk about Khalil Mack in a little bit, but like when the Bears gave up all those picks for Khalil Mack, a lot of people were like, man, that's a lot for a defensive player. It's a lot for a non-quarterback. And then basically every year he was a disappointment because they gave up so much to get him, and that there was always a camp of people that were pissed off. In this trade, and I'm interested in your opinion, but I believe this was actually a pretty good trade all around. I know
Mhm.
that the Broncos gave up a lot, but we talk about it all year. You know, they're a quarterback away from being potentially a Super Bowl caliber team. Yeah, do they got to do some work now to make up for some of these missing pieces? Sure, but they got a rare talent at quarterback. They've got the pieces around him on offense to he could win shootouts, and then we know defensively they've had the pieces there. Yeah, you know, they just lost a few of them and they got some that are free agents, and so they got some work to do. But I think it's good for Denver. You know, they're betting the farm, but you know, it could work. It could pay off for them. I think on the flip side for Seattle, they got you know, a nice score of players and picks. I like that combination. I think Drew Lock, you know, you can basically throw him away. They're probably, I don't know, maybe they'll make him a backup for a year or they'll just cut him or whatever. But, you know, and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, more. But the rumor I'm hearing is now that they got all these picks, they're the front runner to land Deshaun Watson. And Daniel Jeremiah is saying that that's expected to happen at this point. Now that he hasn't been indicted, and you know some things look like it could be clearing, um, and so I think you know if it works out that way, that ends up being actually pretty good in return for Seattle because now you've got a even younger franchise quarterback. And the guy that you gave up that didn't really want to be there anymore, he's now happy somewhere else. And you know you can avoid the rebuild like Pete Carroll was talking about. Um, and you know, and they got a lot of moves they can make, and so I think it was good for both teams, my opinion.
So I disagree with that.
Okay.
I I think one of the reasons why Seattle made this move was because they didn't have a first round pick this year. And funny as it is, the pick that Denver is sending to Seattle for the first round pick this year is actually one spot above the pick that Denver would have or Seattle would have had if it weren't for the
Jamal Adams.
Jamal Adams. Thank you. I was like, I had Devontae stuck in my head, and I was like, but anyways, so it's one pick ahead of that. So they get their first round pick back. They have two. So I don't know if they do have their first round pick next year. So I mean, because what I'm hearing is starting price for Watson is 4 first round picks, and so I think there's a possibility that you're right. They do have the 4 first round picks in the next 3 years, uh, but but I think they did this to draft a quarterback,
Okay.
and I don't think it's a rebuild because it's weird because along with this trade at the same time they released Bobby Wagner.
Yeah, that one.
And they
Yeah.
fucked up that release too. That pisses me off. What I'm hearing is Bobby Wagner found out he was released from news reports.
Oh, yeah. You can't do that shit. Not with a stalwart like him.
Yeah, which which is fucked up. And but I'm surprised that Pete Carroll has not retired yet because he's not one to go through a rebuild, and that's what they're doing. If they were looking to like trade for a franchise quarterback this year, I don't think they would release Bobby Wagner. I think they would have held on to him.
See, I don't know, man. I guess I think there could be some weight to it because Pete Carroll's still there. You know, I think if they're rebuilding, he'd throw in the towel and say, "Thanks, guys, but I'm gone."
Yeah, I know, and I agree with you. It's just it's something doesn't make sense here. I think it's a win for Seattle because they at least get their first round pick back, and the trade's a win for Seattle. I think is a huge win for Denver.
Well, I guess anything could still happen in terms of what happens in Seattle and what happens with Deshaun Watson. Hypothetically, maybe they don't land Deshaun Watson because the price isn't right. Maybe some other team overbids it or whatever. And Pete Carroll could resign later Like it's not totally off the table. It would be out of sequence for what's normal in the coaching cycle, but anything could happen. I mean, fucking Andrew Luck retired like right before the season that one year, and so, anybody can make up their mind at any time.
Yeah, and the thing I heard last year is with Chicago and Seattle, they were close to a deal, but the problem was Carroll asked who my quarterback's going to be. So I don't think this move would have gone through if Carroll wasn't comfortable with Drew Lock being the quarterback this year.
Oh man, I just that's
Which is
that's
fucked
just
up.
such a
Like,
yeah. I can't believe that Pete Carroll would be okay with that, but I don't know. I mean, we've seen enough Drew Lock tape.
yeah, like I don't, I don't. The Seattle side of the trade, everything around the Seattle side of the trade doesn't make sense unless it's to make another move. But everything else tells me that that other move isn't happening.
Okay. All right, so I guess let's keep it moving here. And so the next piece, we already talked about Carson Wentz. We don't need to hit that again. The next one that was pretty big was Khalil Mack. We were just talking about him. He has been traded to the Chargers. And so, James, did you see what did the Chargers have to give up to bring him in, man?
2022 second, 2023 sixth.
A second and a sixth. Okay.
Yeah, didn't didn't the Bears give up like 2 first round picks for him or something like that? Do
They
you
gave up
remember?
a bunch. I remember it was at least two first rounders, and then I think there might have been more than that. But um, I remember the Raiders. They were divided because a lot of people were like diehard Khalil Mack fans because they just haven't had a stud talent like that in forever. But I think most people thought, hey, that was a pretty good score because he's a non-quarterback, and I'm a huge Khalil Mack fan, and he's actually from the Mac conference. I like all those guys, but um, I
So
think this is
here's the trade to the Bears. Raiders gave Khalil Mack 2020 second round pick and a 2020 seventh round pick to Chicago for 2019 first, 2020 first, 2019 sixth, 2020 third. So yeah, so like it's I don't get it. Like you gave up all that for Khalil Mack, and those picks that they gave up were one of them was a good player, one of them was the Bears gave up. It was Josh Jacobs, and for the picks that were traded, they got well the one big one was Cole Kmet
okay.
from from
Yeah,
that trade. So I
and I
mean,
and I like Cole Kmet.
yeah, I like Cole Kmet, but like everything else in that trade doesn't matter. But you gave up 2 first round picks, and the Raiders squandered the second first round pick because that was Damon Arnett that they drafted.
Yeah, I mean they've not. We know they've not drafted well, and you know, that's why they've had some issues. But so what do you think about the trade for the Chargers? Because I like it. I'm excited to see him go to the Chargers.
So this is my first thought when I heard this trade to the Chargers was, oh, is Russell Wilson going to say I'm not waiving my no trade clause? Have to face the Chargers with Bosa and Khalil Mack? Like,
Uh, I don't know. He's not afraid of the competition, man.
right, but like that was my first
Yeah.
thought. But I like for the Chargers, I like the trade, and actually for the Bears, as I think about it, Khalil Mack last year he was injured. Um, he hasn't really amounted to what they thought he was going to be. They're basically they have to do a rebuild in Chicago anyways,
Yeah.
and have max salary kind of weighing down the rebuild. So I can see how it makes sense.
Yeah, and I believe Akeem Hicks is also a free agent. Yeah, I mean we're looking at this is not like typical Chicago Bears. Their defense has fallen apart. They're clearly focusing on the offense, which needs a lot of help. And so it's yeah, they're in a rebuild, like you said. And so I think when you're in a rebuild, these kinds of trades happen because you're stacking picks to try and facilitate the rebuild. You're trying to clear cap space. You're basically redesigning the whole thing. And so it's that's fine. I'm good with it both ways here.
Yeah, me too.
All right, so just skimming some other news. I think we hit like the real big stuff. I mean, I'm looking here. The Cowboys released Greg the Leg Zerloin. Um, you know, Raiders signed Max Crosby, their defensive end, to a 4-year, $98.98 million deal. Good for him. I know they've been super happy with him. Um, let's see. Jason Kelsey, he's going to be playing for the Eagles on a 1-year, $14 million contract.
Yeah, but didn't he become the highest paid center
Yes,
ever?
14 million for one season. Yes, that's the highest. Looks like Fletcher Cox is, subject to some trade rumors. Um, the Raiders released Corey Littleton. That was kind of a bigger move. Um,
You're missing one big thing. The
well,
second biggest thing of the week.
so just get there. I'm skimming. I'm going through it here, homie. Tell me what's up.
Calvin Ridley.
Oh, oh, geez. It happened so long ago now. It
Yeah,
feels it feels like we already talked about it. But you're right. Yeah, hit it up, man. You were
yeah.
chomping at the bit.
So apparently, Calvin Ridley was suspended. He was suspended. Well, it was indefinitely for at least the 2022 season for betting on NFL games. While he was away from the team dealing with his mental health stuff or whatever, he was on the non-football injury list. But he placed within like a 10-day span. Placed three parlays, total amount amounting to $1,500 worth of bets. Those parlays included bets for the Falcons to win. So obviously, right off the top, we know he doesn't know what he's doing when he's betting. And they were parlays. It was like a 3 of 5 and an 8-team parlay that he placed, and he did it on his own account from his iPhone, and the sports book told on him
Oh, geez.
because the sports book's sponsor partner with the NFL, and so they provided the information. It's like, hey, we have this, and so apparently the Falcons knew about it, which is why they weren't this week or prior to that entertaining conversations for trade requests for Calvin Ridley because of the stuff that was going on, and they were being upfront with the teams that were offering stuff that something was coming down the pipeline and on it. And then he released a statement that basically showed no remorse in what he did.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, yeah, he was honest and forthright with the NFL when he was interviewed, but what the fuck? Like, don't you know that, like, didn't Pete Rose get basically banned from baseball because he bet on his team to win? You should know better. I don't care if you're on the non-football injury, you're still a player in the league. You have to respect the rules. It's more of a perception than a reality thing, because if players are allowed to bet on the games they're playing in,
Oh,
then
yeah.
there'll be the perception that the player's doing something. And yeah, he wasn't playing, but it's still, you have to abide by the rules, and it's clearly in the collective bargaining agreement that players shall not bet on NFL games or play fantasy football.
Yeah, because I mean, he could have an inside edge. He could know if somebody's hurt. He could know if, anything. And so it just, because of that risk, I get it. You can't let him do it. And I think it was foolish on his part.
Well, the
Um,
inside edge is not that really big a deal because it's like, for instance, say he were instead of stepping away from the game, he would have retired. He still would have had the inside knowledge of what's going on in the locker room, but he would have been able to bet on the games with no repercussions.
Hmm.
So the inside edge isn't really the issue, and it's more of the perception of could the perception on the integrity of the
Could a
game.
game, could a game be tampered because of that? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, you find out some dude's got like fucking 500 grand on a game, and it's like, yeah, that's a problem. This was small money, but it's just the concept makes it not okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, yeah, thanks for bringing that up. In Lions news, they are releasing defensive end Trey Flowers. It's going to save them about 10.3 million in salary cap space. It sucks, man. That was a Patricia Quinn disastrous deal. The guy like never even got close to living up to it, and I was hopeful for him, to be honest, because he did have really good tape from his time in New England, and it looked like he was on the rise, and it never came to be in Detroit, and so he'll probably go back to the Patriots. That's a typical kind of move, resurrect his
And then
career.
light the fucking shit up and
Yeah, Belichick will bring him back on a sweet deal, sweet meaning cheap deal, and it'll just be a 1 year thing where he'll light it up and then he'll go and get another $100 million contract somewhere else. You know,
speaking of the Patriots, I don't know if this might have came out last week and we missed it, or it might have come out this week, but there was some chatter about what's the guy's name? That's the GM of the Texans. That's from.
oh, I forget his name, but yeah,
Anyways,
he's got the Patriots tie. Yeah,
so when he was with the Patriots, he was in the GM staff, who's general manager staff or whatever, but he was also an assistant coach and had a headset during games and was like in the ear of Belichick and stuff. And there was something that came out that that's what he was expecting in Houston, and that's what he was doing with David Culley last year. And Lovie Smith said, "Well, I don't give a fuck what he did, what he did or didn't do in the past. It's not happening on my with me as the coach."
oh, so he was like dictating some of the coaching, you're saying?
Yeah, he was dictating some of the coaching last year, and Lovie Smith said, "I'm not having that."
Yeah, well, good for him. You know, stay in your lane.
Hmm.
All right, news wise, is there anything else you want to hit, James? I know there were some other moves, some other cuts, signings, things like that. I don't know how deep you want to go, but if you see something, let's hit it. Speak now or forever hold your peace.
There's little Jerry Jones news. We talked about him being ill last week, I think it was, where he has an illegitimate daughter.
Oh yeah, I saw he's being sued by, yeah,
Yeah.
some chick thinks that he's her dad. I mean, hey, maybe he is, and um,
Well, it goes so far as Jerry Jones set up a trust fund for her and her mom, and there's supposedly was a non-disclosure agreement, but she's suing to have the non-disclosure agreement lifted, and her mom and her mom's husband, who wasn't her dad, apparently got a divorce, and there's some stipulations in the divorce about the fact that she's not his daughter
huh?
and stuff
Okay.
like that. So like I think there's a little bit of meat there. I just wanted to bring up Jerry Jones news because I brought up Jerry Jones news last week.
Yeah, no, hey, follow up on the story. Good stuff. Cool. Anything else?
Nope, that was it.
Okay. Well, there was plenty there, man. I mean, that's our longest news segment here for a long time. But let's kick it over to our meat and potatoes, James. Let's do our AFC free agency matchmaker. And so, this is like some of the disclaimer is still sort of like what we did with the franchise tag stuff, meaning that, just because these guys are available doesn't necessarily mean they're going anywhere. Some of these guys hit the market, but they will still sign with the team that they came from. And teams have a lot of time to continue making roster adjustments. And so even if they don't have the salary cap space, just like we saw with the franchise tag. They'll sign a guy anyhow and they'll figure it out later. And so, um, we'll talk salary cap when we look at each team, but we're probably not going to like put a ton of weight onto it because we just know that it's 2022. They can manipulate the shit out of the cap. And so, yeah, let's just start off. Let's do alphabetical. We'll hit the Baltimore Ravens here, James. And I'm referencing, just so we're full disclosure here, Kevin Patra's article on NFL.com. I think he did a pretty good job summing this up for us, kind of making it easy. But the Ravens, he's got three team needs: defensive back, offensive line, defensive line, and he's saying that they're sitting at 15.65 million in space. And so, with that being the case, he kind of points to maybe they go after like Justin Reed or Marcus May at safety. I know that they want to re-sign their center Bradley Bozeman, who I want to say is ranked in like the 30-ish range on the top 101 list. What are you thinking, man? Do you see anybody on this list of free agents? And we're not talking like digging deep, but like, more like splashy kind of. Do you see any kind of big free agent signings happening in Baltimore? Like J.C. Jackson. I mean, that would be huge if they went and grabbed a guy like that.
No, so the thing I look at with Baltimore is with I think defensive tackle is probably their biggest need there because they have what their names? Willis, no, not Willis, Ellis and Williams
Yeah.
are hitting free agency, so they have to replace them, and that's kind of where I looked at it. And then when I looked at the top 100, trying to figure out something, and they still have to sign or re-sign or extend whatever Lamar. So that kind of, you're kind of digging deep for them and who they could pick, and it's going to probably not going to be a big splash. It's going to be like
Well, I mean, I just right off the bat gotta believe they're gonna bring back Calais Campbell. He's already been talking about wanting to
yeah,
come back and make one more run. That would definitely help them shore up
I,
the defensive line.
I actually forgot they had to resign Calais Campbell too. So I mean gonna gonna even make them digging more even deeper, and I can't find anybody that would be a big splash.
So this one's maybe not a like blockbuster kind of thing, but I think when they say defensive back, I think they're more looking at help at safety than they are at cornerback. And maybe they don't go big on, like Marcus Williams, which is going to be a big contract. But they could probably make a move on a guy like Quandre Diggs. He's the number 30th ranked free agent, and Diggs, he played pretty damn good in Seattle, man. He'd fill that hole at safety for Baltimore, and they probably could get him for, you know, they wouldn't have to break the bank. I'm sure he's going to get a lot, but not Marcus Williams a lot.
You might be right on that one.
That's a possibility. That's all I'm saying. Just throwing it out there. And then, there are plenty of other offensive linemen available. The challenge is, if they're looking at a guard, it sounds like the guards that are on the free agent list are expected to get paid. And so I think more likely than not, they'd be drafting a guy to fill one of those spots. But I think there's plenty of cornerbacks and defensive backs available that they could get. So, um, and then defensive linemen, that's tricky too. I think they want to bring back Calais Campbell. I think that, if you're looking at like a bigger name guy, we were talking about Akeem Hicks from Chicago. He's out there. he's probably going to get a big dollar amount on a short-term deal, whether it's 1 or 2 years. Um, and then there's a guy like DJ Jones. He had a great year with the 49ers, but he's younger. And so he's probably going to get a big deal that's longer in length. Maybe that's not what Baltimore's looking for. So, are you with me or are you froze?
No, I'm with you. I saw something that hadn't heard that Cole Beasley requested a trade, and I was like, oh, that might
Oh
change.
yeah, yeah. Well, hey, they've had all sorts of stuff going
Yeah,
on with him, and it was a lot of COVID drama. But
yeah. So I'd seen it, and it threw me because I was going back to my list on it.
well, why don't we jump over to Buffalo? And so Buffalo, going back to Petra's article, he's saying they need somebody on the defensive line, wide receiver, and cornerback. I don't know if cornerback is as high of a need in my opinion, but um, you know, and I mean Tre'Davious White, he had the injury, and I'm sure that did hurt him. But I thought that they were fairly deep at cornerback. Either way, let's just dream a little bit about it. We were talking about Calais Campbell. If he doesn't go back to Baltimore, I would love to see him go to Buffalo. And Petra even calls it out here that a free agent like Campbell would look nice. He's saying even DJ Jones or Sebastian Joseph Day. I don't know if DJ Jones would work. They're going to pay him a lot of money, and you know, I don't know. So Calais Campbell's probably going to get a lot of money too. It's just if he's willing to, do a discounted deal to be on a Super Bowl team, I think that's what you're banking on with Calais Campbell if you're Buffalo.
I have one that's a little bit off the beaten path on this for Buffalo.
Let's hear it, man.
So I think their running game has been subpar. And I think they need one of the keys for this offseason is they need to figure out their running game.
Okay.
If they can work the
Trade
magic
for
with the
Marlon
cat,
Mack.
no. If
Sorry,
they
I'm
can
just
work,
jumping.
if they can work the magic, although that's not that bad. Trade Cole Beasley for Marlon Mack. That's a good one. I was thinking if they can work it in, they signed Melvin Gordon.
Oh man, yeah, it makes me wonder how much money Melvin Gordon's going to want. Um, but I think at this stage of his career, my opinion, I think he's still effective at the goal line, and we know that they don't run the ball a shit ton because Josh Allen runs just as much as he passes. You could put Melvin Gordon in like an 80-20 committee with what's his face, Singletary or whatever, um, and and just let him hammer it in from the goal line, man.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at, and I think Melvin Gordon can kind of give that a little bit of a running game that would make Singletary maybe be more effective, and Melvin Gordon can catch the ball out of the backfield too.
Yeah, yeah. And so they had what's his face, Gabriel Davis start really getting hot in the playoffs at wide receiver. And so, with Cole Beasley, possibly getting bounced out, it just makes me wonder. I definitely don't see them going big at receiver on a guy like Allen Robinson. Um, but could you see him spending some money on a guy? And I don't think Odell Beckham, I think he's going to end up back with the Rams. Um, could you see them spending money on a guy like Michael Gallup? He's young. He showed the potential in Dallas. He's, not a number one, but he could be a solid number two. And in that team, it'd be, a number two or a number three with Davis. The problem is, I just wonder if you're going to have to pay too much for a guy like Gallup because he does have some good tape. He's coming off injury, though.
Yeah, I don't see the fit with Gallup for what they need to replace in Cole Beasley.
Okay.
I
No,
think
yeah, no, different style. I agree with that. Different style. And I guess I'm just skimming the list. I'm not sure. Is there a little shifty kind of slot guy available, man? It seems like a lot of these guys are more field stretching, you
they
know.
are.
Yeah, it's I'm not
And
seeing a wide receiver that would fit him like that. I think they'd either if they really want that again, they would either have to trade for it from somewhere or they'd have to draft it.
you could get it like a you possibly could put Cordell Patterson in that role.
Yeah. I mean, I'm surprised Atlanta didn't hang on to him. He
Me
was
too. Me
he
too.
was their best player, but neither here nor there. Yeah, would he be willing to sign a good deal to be on a Super Bowl team? Or is he thinking, hey, I just had a productive year, I want somebody to pay me, and then maybe it puts him out of the Buffalo race.
Yeah, possibly. Like, but I mean, outside of that, I'm not seeing anyone on my top 100 list.
So maybe not a Cole Beasley equivalent, but I think a very solid contributing piece that's hanging out there is Jamison Crowder, and he can do a lot in the slot, man.
Oh, that's an interesting one. I didn't have Crowder that high in my top 100, so I kind of was cutting it off at the top 100 to.
Yeah, so I got him at I'm showing NFL.com's got him at 76, so he's down there a little ways, and maybe that means it'd be good bang for the buck. All right, so why don't we keep moving then? Why don't we look at the Bengals? We got them up next. So Cincinnati, I like what this guy did here. Needs OL OL OL. Just get offensive linemen. Yeah, I mean clearly just get offensive linemen. And they've got cap space, James, 34.6 million. In his article, he's pointing to Teron Armstead at tackle and Brandon Scherf at guard. I mean, honestly, just sign them both.
And while you're at it, throw in Ryan Jensen
Just to be safe.
just to be safe.
Yeah. No, I mean, hey, honestly, do it. And if
Maybe even Dwayne Brown too. And
yeah, and like here's the thing. If you're the Bengals and you don't want to like maybe throw money on two big guys, okay, sign Armstead because he is rock solid at left tackle, and
mhm.
then go out and spread that money on a couple of like the mid-tier offensive linemen. Morgan Moses is out there. He's underrated. You probably wouldn't have to spend a shit ton on him. Austin Corbett's out there. He had a pretty good year with the Rams. You wouldn't have to spend a shit ton on him. And you could have depth if you're worried about not wanting too much concentration in salaries. But I mean, for them, geez, man, you know, Burrow
If they
got you
had
to the
an
dance.
offensive line this past season, they would have won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, no, man, yeah.
If they had an offensive
It,
line, they would have won the damn Super Bowl.
Yeah. All right. So Armstead is a lock. They just got to do it. Scherf. My only concern with him is the injuries. So he's missed
Mhm.
24 games in the last 5 years. I think, if you're going to get Scherf, you got to get somebody else too. And so Jensen, like you're saying, I mean, could they go after three guys? I mean, maybe that's all their free agency is they just get three big name offensive linemen. And
Yeah, and you get one of the in the draft, you get one of the top tier offensive linemen in the draft to back up Scherf.
yeah, yeah, you can get a guy and yeah, have him grooming, under his wing, and if you need him, there you go.
I haven't done
Um,
that much of a dive into the offensive line draft prospects yet, but
oh, there's plenty of them. There's
there's
plenty of them,
plenty of them.
and you can always find guys, especially interior linemen in the middle rounds, if you know what you're doing. Um, I like that. I think it's simple. I don't know that they got to do anything else. And if they did that, if they hit free agency hard for offensive line, they could spend the bulk of their draft on defense because
Hmm.
the rest of their offense is set, man. I mean, I will say this, maybe for shits and giggles, you bring in Gronk because you know he wants to play with Burrow. And you have, Uzoma and Gronk at tight end. I'd love to see that, man.
Hmm.
But I'm a
Interesting.
huge Gronk fan. So,
Yeah.
all right, well, here, let's move on. This is a fun one for me. I like the Cleveland Browns. They're next. We're showing needs of wide receiver, edge, defensive tackle. We know quarterback is kind of in that mix, but they're probably going to play it out with Baker Mayfield. They're sitting at 17.9 million in cap space, so they got some money to play with. Looks like Jarvis Landry is expected to be out, and we know that Odell Beckham was traded mid-season. That would leave the cupboard pretty bare at wide receiver. Um, you know, it's a run-first offense, but you still got to have a wide receiver one. Do you think they go after it in free agency with a guy like Allen Robinson, or do you think they try to
That's
draft it?
that's exactly who I have them signing is Allen Robinson.
Okay. I mean, it
And
would break
that's
my heart because I want him to go to Detroit, but I mean,
I think
he's the top wide receiver, I believe, if I'm looking at the list right.
I think Detroit will be in on it, but I think that the Browns might outbid Detroit.
All right, so man, I could totally see it happening. I could see them getting Allen Robinson, but James, I gotta tell you, I would rather see them spend the money on Chandler Jones.
That's a
Him,
good one too.
him, and frickin' Miles Garrett on that defensive line, man. That would make that team dangerous.
Yeah, but I think they're gonna shy away from that because of what happened with
Fucking Clowney.
uh Clowney and how Clowney sucks. So they went out and got Clowney and he fucking sucked, so it didn't work out. So I think they're gonna kind of shy away from that a little bit.
All right, then go after Emmanuel Ogba because I think he'd be solid on the edge. He'd fill that need. And then I don't know, man, just retread it. Go back after Odell Beckham. Don't take Allen Robinson away from me. We know they're not going after Odell Beckham, but I'm just trying to look through the list here. Michael Gallup, he's not really a wide receiver one, and so if they brought a guy like him in, I think they'd be drafting to try and find a one. Past him on the list, man. I mean, wide receivers are kind of scarce. You got Russell Gage. I don't see him being a one. Would they roll the dice on Juju Smith-Schuster?
Mhm.
They know him from being in the conference or in the division, and he potentially could be good value to roll the dice to try and put him in that spot as a one. And he's still young. He's only 25.
I agree. I agree with you partially on that. It might be a good fit, but Schuster is not a number one receiver at all.
No, he had the one good year where he had the 1,400 yards. And other than that, it's been dicey at best. And
Right,
he's
but
had
that 1,400 yards was when Antonio Brown was still there.
correct. It's a good point.
So I don't see him as a true number one or number one level. And plus I have Schuster going to somewhere else that we'll talk about next week.
Okay. So you think Allen Robinson's the man? Um,
Yeah, I do, unfortunately.
that's all right. Let's see what happens, James. I think the Lions are gonna.
Like I could also they could also surprise us and go after Marcus Mariota
To compete with Mayfield.
to compete with Mayfield. Yeah.
because you know that the salary, whatever the dead cap on Mayfield, right? They can't.
Hmm.
I remember we talked about it being prohibitive, right?
There ain't shit for dead cap on Mayfield because he's still on his rookie contract. He's going into the 5th year of his rookie contract. I'm pretty sure on that.
I don't know, I thought we were talking about. Yeah, it's 18 million guaranteed is the problem. 18.8 million guaranteed. And so, but yeah, I mean, 18.8 in today's day and age, that's cheap for quarterback dollars. If you could get Mayfield, I mean, if you could get Mariota at the right price, that could light the fire under Mayfield. And if it doesn't work, Mariota's had his moments.
Hmm.
You could go a little bit back and forth if you had to.
I mean, just not this past year, the year before last, there was talk on if the Raiders would get rid of Derek Carr and have Mayfield start at quarterback.
Hmm.
I may have been part of that talk, but
Do you see Teddy Bridgewater in that conversation too, or no?
fuck no.
You're done on the Teddy Bridgewater deal?
I'm off the Teddy Bridgewater train.
Yeah, I kind of feel like if he couldn't make it work in Denver, really, where's he going to make it? Especially Cleveland, where they have no receivers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess Mariota, the interesting part of that is he can run a little bit.
Hmm.
So, if you don't have the receivers, maybe he's running to get you some yards. But okay, interesting. Well, let's move it on to Denver then. Talking about the Broncos. So they need help on the edge. They need help at linebacker, and they need help at cornerback. The cornerback thing is, I thought the way they revamped it last year, they'd be set, but free agency and whatnot. And then at linebacker, I'm really hoping they hang on to Josie Jewell. We talked about Kenny Young. I gotta believe they're going to go back and re-sign him. And so maybe linebacker goes away a little bit. But, they could still use more help there because they weren't like a dominant position group. And then help on the edge. And so 26.2 million in cap space. What do you think here, man?
This is a ridiculous idea. Von Miller.
Bringing him back?
Yeah.
Okay.
You trade him for what did they get for him? A second and a third? I think it was a second and a third for that is what they got for him.
And
Trade
then you
him
get
for
to
a second
sign
and
him
a third,
back.
and you come back and sign him back. Miller has kind of hinted something about Denver on social media too.
Okay.
So
What do you think about them going after Carlton Davis in the secondary?
that's an interesting one.
I just I think they gotta. I mean, honestly, hey, Bobby Wagner was released. Go and get him and lock up your linebacker spot. I don't know. Like, I think Denver has a ton of options, man. Chandler
Yeah.
Jones, if you wanted to spend money, get the edge. There's a lot of guys that I like for Denver, honestly. Like anybody on the deep, freaking Stephon Gilmore. Like anybody in like the top 30 that's on defense, I could see them being a great fit in Denver, man.
Yeah. So like I think if they if it's not Von Miller, I think Chandler Jones is an interesting pick. I think Reddick might be an interesting one there. I mean, this team, we said this last year, they were a quarterback away from being a Super Bowl contender. They have they have the defense. Now they have the quarterback. They have ridiculous
Yeah.
weapons on the offense. I mean, maybe they need a tight end.
Gronk.
Maybe
Gronk to
little bit
Denver.
of offensive line, but the offensive line was decent. So, I mean, whoever they go out and sign is kind of a luxury.
Oh man. Gronk to Denver, dude. I would love to see him with Russell Wilson. I mean, he
Oh, that'd
wants
be
to be with Burrow
ridiculous.
though, so let's not go and plant some seeds that, you know, let's not mess that up for Burrow. Uh, yeah, dude. I mean, Denver could do anything. Devondre Campbell at linebacker. I mean, holy cow, dude. Like, there's so many guys here. I do like what you're saying with Hassan Reddick on the edge, though. Instead of Von Miller, go after Reddick. He's young. Sign him to, 4-year deal or something if you wanted to. I know he's coming off a short deal with Carolina, but man, there's a lot they could do, man. I think Denver's in a really good position.
Yeah, they are.
All right, so next up we got Houston, and basically they're
Next
saying,
game.
yeah, Houston needs
Houston Texans
anybody and
don't want to
everybody.
win football. They don't want to win a football game.
Okay,
Sorry.
let's talk about them for a minute though, James. Just a minute. So they got 18.3 million in cap space, and they basically need everything. Okay, and so if we know that they're screwed up, but they brought in Lovey Smith, which means they're probably going to want to focus on defense. He's a seasoned coach. Typically you see the rookie coach make the mistake of, oh, I'm a defensive minded guy, so I'm going to go after all offense because I can make the defense work with anybody. And then they fail and they get fired. I think Lovey Smith is smart enough to say, hey, I'm defensive minded. Let's start there, and then we'll figure out the offense. Um, with that being the case, if I'm them, I'm building from the trenches. So I'm looking at defensive linemen. I'm looking at pass rushers. Um, and then if you're going offense, I'm doing the same thing. I'm going offensive linemen. Maybe you make sure that you give Davis Mills a chance, keep him upright. Um, I don't know, dude. It's like take it from the Lions playbook last year. You're in year one of a rebuild. Start in the trenches.
It's an interesting perspective. Interesting perspective.
Unless you see something else. I think it's a
They
waste.
need so much there that it's just ridiculous how much how much how many positions they need. Like seriously, like they need everything,
Yeah.
everything,
So, all right, so then let's
including a
talk about
quarterback.
this. Because they need so much, it's no, you're not going to go and sign guys from the top 30. You're looking at guys from like the bottom 30 of that top 100 list. And you're trying to spread your money around as much as possible. Go after frickin' I mean, I'm just looking at it right now. I mean, there's a lot of guys. We talked about Austin Corbett a minute ago on offensive line. He's out there. Maybe you go after him. Maybe you go after Jamison Crowder so you get yourself a wide receiver. Morgan Moses, get some help on the line. Um, frickin' Devin McCourty, he's like frickin' so long in the tooth, but he can probably still put one good season out there. Get him out there on your secondary. Spread that money around, man.
Go
I
out and
mean,
get a
frickin'
Riley Reef.
yeah. I was just looking at Riley Reef, Donta Hightower at linebacker, man. Give him a year, dude. Just fucking spread it around. If any of these guys turn out to be decent, give them another contract, or just like Andrew Norwell. He's 30, offensive guard, man. He's not going to get monster money, but he could start for a number of years still.
Hmm.
Leighton Vander Esch, man. He's young. Maybe you resurrect his career with Lovey Smith. You know, it's sign him to a short deal. If he does good, you get him long term. I like that. I think you focus on the trenches, but also focus on the bottom of that top 100 list and spread your money around as much as you can. And
I
I
like
would say
it.
I would say even try to go after, you know, have some balance, but try to go after the youth. So like Jayon Brown at inside linebacker, 27 years old. You know, take a shot on him. If it pays off, he's young enough that you can sign him longer. Harrison Phillips, he's 26. He's defensive tackle. if it works out, you can sign him to a longer term deal. Like give yourself that option where if the guy makes good on it, he earns it, pay him. And if you need to, yeah, go after some of these guys that are longer in the tooth. If you need to do a 1 year deal with Joe Hayden, that's fine. Fill your roster, but make sure you got like enough of them that are young enough that have the potential for something more.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't think they're going to spend money because I don't think they want to win.
Yeah, they suck, dude. They suck bad, man. All right. Holy cow, this one. Let's just go on to our next team. This one's blowing my mind.
Holy
Man,
shit.
these guys, Indianapolis Colts are next, James.
I just looked at it and wow.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
69.8 million in cap space. Holy fuck, how did that happen? A lot of that's obviously going to get eaten up if they make a trade for Jimmy G, or whatever. I don't know, who else is out there at quarterback, but um, they're showing needs, obviously, quarterback, wide receiver, offensive tackle. I think, um, they got Michael Pittman Jr. at wide receiver. He's coming up, but they could still use another top flight wide receiver. And so, Allen Robinson, if he's not on the table, I like this guy in his article. He put Christian Kirk in here. I think that's a solid option. DJ Shark, he listed. I like that as a solid option. That's assuming that Pittman steps into that true wide receiver one role. And I'm comfortable with those picks because you get some options there.
DJ Shark's a conversation for next week. Christian
All right.
Kirk's a conversation for next week.
So these guys got a lot of money, man.
Dwayne Brown.
Lock up that left tackle spot short
Lock
term.
up that left tackle spot short term.
Because they've got so much money, would you make the case for Teron Armstead instead? Because you could get the guy for longer. You could get him for 4 or 5 years.
You
Or do you
could make
think,
the case,
or you think
but
Dwayne Brown 1 year and then let's draft somebody and maybe get a cheaper option?
exactly. I think that's exactly where my thought was on it.
Okay. So, the one thing they're not talking about here is their secondary. They don't list that as a need, but I very distinctively remember they had problems in the secondary last year. And so with all this cap space, I could easily see them rolling the dice on a guy like J.C. Jackson at cornerback,
Mm.
or even Marcus Williams at safety, you know, and they could get him on a longer term deal. Um,
We have two more teams before we get to JC Jackson, but that's okay.
okay. Yeah, and man, they've got a lot of money. And they're not. What do they do with it, James? What do they do with it?
So I kind of went out primary, secondary, and tertiary or ancillary needs for each team. And primary needs for the Colts, I had QB, edge, offensive tackle, wide receiver. Secondary, I had secondary.
Okay.
But I think you need to address, like, you're good enough where you are in the secondary where you should address the other positions first.
Like edge, you're saying?
Yeah, like edge, offensive tackle, wide receiver. You obviously need to address the quarterback, but I don't think there's a big name. Like maybe a Jameis Winston.
Yeah, I mean, Winston's
What I
intriguing.
actually think is they pick up the phone, they blow Houston's socks off with a trade for Watson. Even though it's in the same division, they just blow Houston away with what they're willing to give up for Watson. Get Watson in there, shore up that left tackle position, and then they could be a Super Bowl contender.
Man, I don't I can't fathom that happening. I think it'd be amazing. Um, Yeah, and I think either way, I think what you're saying is get your tackle figured out.
Mhm.
You know, I would spend the money on Teron Armstead because we know that they've got they've got the running game going. Don't put that in jeopardy. It's going to be a new quarterback no matter what. Make sure he's protected. Give him his best chance, especially if you don't go after a guy like Allen Robinson and you're relying on Michael Pittman to be your number one. You're going to need to give that quarterback a little bit more time to find an open guy. And so, yeah, I think the offensive tackle's their top priority, other than quarterback, I guess. Um,
Yeah. I think the problem is in my thoughts on how I see this happening. I think by trading for Watson, you're taking away a lot of that cap space. So you're going to have to go to like a Dwayne Brown as opposed to an Armstead.
okay, I got you.
It's just a
If they
little
could
bit
pull it
below.
off, yeah, if they
Yeah.
could pull it off, yeah. And if they can't pull it off, I mean, honestly, do you go for broke in this free agency? You know, I mean, it seems to me like Frank Reich is going to be running out of time, and I really don't even feel like it's his fault. I think he's a really good coach. I like him a lot. Um, but they shouldn't be sitting on this much cap space. You know, spend it and give him the guys to get him over the hump.
Yeah, and I agree with you. It's just that I just keep going back like if if they can't make the trade for Watson, like I think is going to happen, then you're going to like a Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback for them.
Yeah.
So then you're looking at spending the money in the other places.
Yeah. All right.
So I
Yeah.
can I can see that. It's just I just for some reason I'm seeing Watson playing for Indianapolis next year.
That'd be interesting. That would be it, it'd be it'd be pretty wild. But hey, anything can happen. All right. So let's move it on here. Next up, we got the Jacksonville Jaguars, and man, they suck so bad. But their top three needs on this list anyhow are offensive lineman, wide receiver, and linebacker, and they're sitting at about 38.8 million in cap space. They've got a lot of options, man, and I think that they're a team. Even though they listed just these three positions, I think it's much like Houston. They need almost everything. And so, yeah, you argue the quarterback situation is set because they drafted Trevor Lawrence first overall last year. But, you know, I think they could still put more people on the offensive line, even with franchise tag and Cam Robinson. Um, Pretty much all their wide receivers are free agents. And so, you know, they could throw a couple darts at that position and draft a couple there. Um, I don't I don't know, dude. It's hard even thinking about Jacksonville because they've been so dysfunctional. But they got Doug Peterson now. Just trying to think, what would Doug do? What would Doug do, James?
All right. So for Jacksonville, if Robinson doesn't end up in, I put him in Cleveland, right?
Yeah, Allen
Yeah,
Robinson.
yeah. If Allen Robinson doesn't end up in Cleveland, he's ending up in Jacksonville. I also see them going hard after Juju Smith-Schuster,
Okay,
and I also see them going hard. I see them getting weapons for their young quarterback. I'm reading a lot that they're gonna like go after like offensive line, but I just don't see that happening. I see them more doing offensive line through the draft and getting the weapons for the quarterback.
gotcha. Yeah, and I know Doug Peterson. He was a big fan of having that dominant offensive line in Philly. And so whatever way they address it, I'm sure it's going to happen. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense to get them weapons for the quarterback. I'm just thinking at tight end, who's out there other than Gronk?
I was just
because
looking at it.
because you know Gronk is not going to Jacksonville.
Yeah, I looked at tight end for a second, and I thought I'd seen like the next best tight end besides Gronk was somebody that was not very.
Not good enough. Not going to cut it.
Yeah, I'm just looking.
Evan Ingram. Um, here's the thing. I could see them taking a
Yeah,
shot on
actually,
Evan Ingram.
it was Evan Ingram. That was the next best guy I had at tight end.
Yeah, and here's the deal. He's still young. He's 28. I I I think that they could take a shot on him. I'm not a huge fan of him. I know you're not either, but they need so many pass catchers. Why wouldn't you try? Go out and get a couple wide receivers, get him in there for the heck of it, man. Like the more the merrier, basically.
I'd step down one more at tight end and go after Gerald Everett.
Oh yeah, if he's out there, yeah, get Gerald Everett. Yeah. Oh man, see, so I just went past Evan Ingram and I saw Laken Tomlinson at guard.
Yeah,
Get him in Jacksonville so that you got that frickin' road grader guy for the running game. You know that they got ETN plus they still got James Robinson, right? So run the shit out of the ball, take the pressure off of Trevor Lawrence. They can do a lot, but you know, they got to be smart.
yeah, I agree with you. They got to be smart. They can do a lot. I think they focus on weapons for Lawrence and give him a real chance.
Okay, offense first.
Yeah.
Oh man, who was it earlier you were talking about? Oh, you were talking about Buffalo going after Melvin Gordon. Um, yeah, I was just looking at Leonard Fournette, and that made me wonder who needs a running back. But all right, let's move on. Let's go to the Kansas City Chiefs. They're up next, and so James, I think you were talking about them going after J.C. Jackson. You were
Nope.
you were saying two
Nope.
away. Oh,
Nope. Nope.
all
Not quite.
right, all right.
Not,
So then
not
then my
quite.
math is off. But so all right, Chiefs.
I said two
They're
more teams than J.C. Jackson.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. So Kansas City Chiefs, they're rough cap wise. They're about 6 million over the cap, so they got their work cut out for them. Their needs are defensive back, defensive lineman, wide receiver, and Petra's noting that re-signing Tyrann Mathieu is a priority. Um, I agree. I think he's fit in very well there. I think they like him. If they can find a way to get him, it's a great choice. They do need to figure out the cornerback situation. It seems like we've been talking about that every year in Kansas City, James.
Hmm. So the reason why I didn't have them going after J.C. Jackson, and I can understand it's a fit, it's a need, it could be a fit, but they're so far over the cap that it would be a miracle for them to be able to get him. So I'm looking for them if they go after secondary, like I'm looking the back half of the top 100, like a Rasul Douglas or Steven Nelson, that area.
Okay.
Um, I think though that I think they're with the edge they're going to be hesitant, or the D line they're going to be hesitant to take a big swing at in free agency with the Frank Clark fiasco, not fiasco, but issues. They have this. I think they would be a perfect landing spot for like wide receiver, maybe. Like trying to look for my wide receivers, like an MVS
Okay.
or do I have another one? I don't think I have another one after him. Yeah, like an MVS. Like they go out sign Valdez Scantling, whatever, MVS. They go out, they sign MVS. They have him opposite of Tyreek Hill to play that second fiddle, and I think that's where I see them going.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I think it's tough, man. I think we're not going to see a splash from them. I think if they can find a way to keep Matthew, that'd be huge for them. I'm not sure they'll be able to figure it out, but you never know. But man, yeah, it's tough because they need help on that defense, and they need help at wide receiver, which is kind of crazy. But they got Mahomes, so they're always going to be in it.
Sorry.
All right, moving on here.
I looked ahead a little bit, and I didn't
Oh,
realize not this scene, but the next scene. But anyways, let's.
all right, yeah, let's do the next one. Is the Las Vegas Raiders. We're showing team needs a wide receiver, offensive lineman, and cornerback, and they're sitting at about 17.8 million in cap space. Who do you like for these guys, James?
J.C. Jackson.
J.C. Jackson. This is your pick. Okay. As
I,
simple
I
as that.
as simple as that. If if they weren't able to get J.C. Jackson, I see them going D-line actually.
Could you see them plucking Laken Tomlinson, take him away from the 49ers?
That's a good one.
I mean, you've got Josh Jacobs. So, oh man, geez, here's one, finally a running back one. Do you go get Chase Edmonds? Have him be your frickin' James White, your Danny Woodhead, your frickin', you know, your little pass catching running back to pair with Josh Jacobs. You got to remember it's McDaniel's calling the show now.
Huh. Huh.
I mean, it's not a need, but it would fit like a glove, I'm sure.
That might be a good one. That's actually the only position that I don't see them having a need at all. Not
Yeah.
primary, secondary, tertiary, ancillary. Like they just don't need a fucking running back. So, um,
But you know that's been a key component to Josh McDaniel's offense.
it has.
And Derek Carr's not exactly a deep ball bomber kind of a quarterback.
I I say they possibly go with like maybe like a BJ Hill for interior defensive line, kind of shore up that defense.
Okay. Yeah, and they need wide receiver help. I mean, do you
Well,
see them in on the
that's
Allen
what
Robinson sweepstakes?
I thought I already put somebody. Well, I thought I already mentioned a wide receiver for.
Oh, who did you mention?
I thought I had, but maybe I didn't.
Maybe I just was dreaming about something while you said it.
No, I was I was thinking possibly like a DJ Shark.
I'd like that. I like Shark. I think he's underrated. I think he could be good in a lot of places. You put him with what's his name? Edwards is coming up on that team.
Yeah,
Um,
or
and
maybe even
Renfro.
Christian Kirk.
Yep.
Like I like Christian Kirk. Like he hasn't performed like I thought he would, but I liked him coming into the league. I thought like his rookie season, like I was really high on him, and like he kind of is he's meh. But
Yeah.
I think he could under McDaniel's I mean Carr's accurate as hell, and you don't have to spread the or you don't have to go deep that much underneath. I think he might be a good fit there.
Yeah. I think they're going to have to draft to get a number one, but
Yeah.
it'd be good to throw a dart at it to get him something now. I like the Tomlinson thing. Get him that offensive line help. Get
Yeah, I
get a little more in the run game. And then at cornerback, I don't know, man. I don't see them spending big on a cornerback, but you know, I mean, you got guys later on in the top 100 list. Casey Hayward's out there. You got, there's a lot of Dante Jackson. You can throw a couple darts on these guys and see what happens. But I think with McDaniels being there, focus on your offense. You're getting behind Derek Carr, you know, offensive minded coach, and defense later. Figure it out later.
I could see
Okay,
that.
moving on. Next up, we got the Los Angeles Chargers, James, and we're showing team needs a defensive tackle, cornerback, linebacker, maybe not now that they got Khalil Mack, and cap space of 42.3 million. What you looking at here, my friend?
Okay, so I saw this and I said that was my holy shit. And then you have to realize that this was before the Khalil Mack trade.
Oh yeah, so yeah, what's their cap space now?
It's
Yeah,
now 24.
okay.
And that's I had to look that up because it just didn't feel right. Um, who could I see the Chargers? Because for the Chargers, I before the Khalil Mack trade, I had them going after linebackers.
I think they gotta go. All right, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So now that I'm scrambling to.
I'll give you my pick for them is they go after, my opinion, the top defensive tackle on the board, which is DJ Jones. Get a guy that can just hold down the fort on the inside of that line. You got Bosa, now you got Khalil Mack, and if you go beyond that, if you go beyond DJ Jones, go after one of the higher rated cornerbacks to go with Asante Samuel Jr. But DJ Jones, it's like there's the argument of, hey, if your defensive line is that good and they're getting that much pressure, it's going to make life a lot easier for your defensive backs. And so maybe you don't need a top flight defensive back as long as your defensive line is stacked the way you want it.
I could see that. That does make lot of sense the way you put it. But on the other hand, if your secondary is that good, then your defensive line could get more pressure too.
You're giving it to me the other way, huh?
Yeah. So I mean, I could see them in on the J.C. Jackson sweepstakes, but I think
Oh man, whoa, hang on.
Marcus Williams.
All right, yeah, yeah. No, talk about that, and then I want to name a guy. But yeah,
Yeah, so I think Marcus Williams might be a good target for them. Like, yeah, he's a
pair
safe
him with
bet.
Derwin James.
Exactly.
Man, that'd be a
And
dangerous combo of safeties.
As long as Derwin James stays healthy, that'd be phenomenal. They could also go after like a Stephon Gilmore, um, there, and then you get the defensive backs for the coverage. Yeah, you have to go defensive backs, especially in the division they're in. You
So
have Russell Wilson, you have Justin Herbert, and you have Patrick Mahomes that you're going against. You need the coverage more than you need the
go,
defensive tackle. The edge rushers
I,
can get to the quarterback.
I say go both, but yeah, I like your argument there. I like your logic. Darius Williams, he's the 40th ranked free agent on NFL.com. Brandon Staley knows him well from his time with the Rams. And this guy did great on the other side of the field from Jalen Ramsey, man,
That's a
considering
good.
that everybody throws to that side of the field.
Yeah,
I
that's a good one. You also have Marcus May out there.
Yep, yeah, I like that. I like that for these guys. Okay, let's keep moving here. We got the Miami Dolphins next. and we're showing offensive lineman, running back, wide receiver, and 51.3 million in cap space. It looks like, man, they're just going to focus on offense is kind of like the inclination here. Um, I mean, Tua's their guy, and so they want to give him weapons and they want to keep him safe. So I totally understand that. I would throw some dough at the offensive line, which has been an issue for Miami for what seems like forever now. So Petra's got Lake and Tomlinson noted. That's an option, you know.
That's that was one of my top ones. I had them going after too. So I can see that.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, it just depends. You know, they've got a lot of space. You know, I could see them being in on Teron Armstead because of the amount of cap space they have. You know, and he'd be a little bit of a longer term guy. You know, Dwayne Brown, that's a pick too, but you know, it's just like kind of like a 1 year kind of deal. Um, I mean, honestly, they should just sprinkle it around with
Mhm.
offensive linemen. You know,
The other
James Daniels at guard, he's another one.
the other thing I see with Miami is the running back. Like I was we talked about it last year after the draft. I was so pissed that they didn't draft a running back.
Well, Leonard Fournette,
Yeah, I don't think the top running backs that are available are worthwhile for them to go after. I don't think they're that much of an upgrade. And except for possibly Rashad Penny.
oh man, I like that. Yeah.
Or Rashad Penny or Chase Edmonds.
You know, Penny, if he could stay healthy,
Hmm.
and they did invest in the offensive line, oh, like, man, like if they went after Laken Tomlinson, James Daniels, and Rashad Penny, I think you just did a huge solid because now you can run the ball. You've got a good offensive line. You know, man, that's an interesting way to go.
Yeah.
I like that. And yeah, I mean, they're saying they need a wide receiver. They need somebody to go with Jalen Waddle. I'm not as concerned about that because they're keeping Gasicki around. But yeah, you know, like go after some wide receivers too. But I'd focus on the line, and I like what you're saying with the running back stuff with Penny. That'd be a good pick. Okay, next up we got the New England Patriots, and we're looking at needs of cornerback, wide receiver, linebacker, and cap space of 13.4 million. James, I mean, we talked about Trey Flowers getting cut. I have no doubt he's going to go back to New England. Um, but who else do you see these guys looking at?
So Bill Belichick is notorious for letting the high price secondary go. Our high profile player that's going to be high priced walk in free agency like they're doing with JC Jackson and go out and sign a cheaper alternative that will fit into Belichick's defense, especially.
Okay,
And the fit I see here is Trevarius Ward.
okay,
And I think he's a cheaper. He's not as good as J.C. Jackson, but he can step into that number one quarterback role and at least replace most of Jackson's abilities, not abilities, most of Jackson's production at corner.
gotcha. Yeah, I like that pick. I was just looking at DJ Reed is the 38th ranked free agent cornerback. Um, you know, that maybe could be a value pick for them, but Ward, I think, has a little bit more name value to him. Um, I like that pick. You know, here's the thing, man. I don't know that they're going to go crazy because of their amount of cap space, and they went crazy in free agency last year. If they did, this is just my opinion, and I don't want to keep beating this dead horse of a name, but New England has sucked for all time finding wide receivers. If there
Hmm.
was ever a team that was going to spend the money on Allen Robinson, you would think it would be them, but they won't do it. I know they won't do it. It's not their style. And it was
You
actually very
see, that's why the
uncharacteristic of them.
Calvin Ridley thing burns so much because I honestly saw New England trading for Calvin Ridley.
Oh man, I would have loved that, James.
I honestly saw that. That's what I was ready to talk about this week because we were talking about how we were doing AFC's free agents, and I was going, I was going to address the wide receiver with Calvin Ridley so they could go after like, cornerbacks or other positions, and then Ridley gets suspended and fucks everything
Yeah,
up.
yeah. So I guess looking at other positions, they did let go of Kyle Van Noy, who they might get back on a dirt cheap deal because they're good at doing that. I could actually see them taking a swing on Anthony Barr to be in a similar kind of position. He's a little bit long in the tooth. You could get him for the right price. And Belichick's been good at extending guys' careers like that.
That's a good one.
Okay, moving on. We got the New York Jets up next, James. Defensive back, wide receiver, edge, 48.5 million in space. They need a lot, dude. They need way more than just this. They're in that same boat as basically Houston and in Jacksonville, where they kind of need everything. They did draft Zach Wilson super high last year, so maybe you say quarterback is probably off limits.
But I need a
But
back quarterback though. Like I
yeah,
literally, when I mapped it out, I had quarterback as an ancillary need for them.
And I mean, okay, I could see them going after a guy like Teddy Bridgewater, smart quarterback, game manager, try to have him hold the clipboard for the young guy, and then if the young guy goes down, you got a safe backup option.
Yeah, I agree with you. I see them going. I think I see them going defensive with their big splash free agent. Um,
If they're smart, they will, because I mean, Robert Saleh, defensive-minded coach, I would spend all the money on defense, whatever way you can.
yeah, like how much did they have again?
48 million.
So like I could see them going after and landing, which he gets a lot. He, he people kind of downgrade him because of certain plays that have happened that are like ridiculously lucky plays. But Marcus Williams, I think,
Yeah.
is a phenomenal safety.
Yeah, and I,
And
I could see this being a good landing spot for him. Yeah.
and I also could see them going after like a Chandler Jones or or like an Agba, but I think Chandler Jones. So I'm going to say they're going to get Marcus Williams and Chandler Jones.
I would like that. I wonder if Chandler Jones would go to the Jets because his stage of his career, is he going to hold out and try and be on a winner? Um, I like Marcus Williams with Sala. I think that he could say, hey, this is my guy for the next 5+ years at safety, and then focus elsewhere. I like Ogba a lot. I think he'd be a great pick for the Jets. Um, yeah, yeah. I mean, they need a lot. I could eat. I don't think that they would. It's a similar kind of thing. I don't think that they would be able to get a guy like Melvin Ingram because he's probably holding out for a Super Bowl team. But I like the concept of getting a guy like Melvin Ingram where you have that veteran leader on defense to try and impart some wisdom on some younger guys that maybe they go out and draft. Um, but yeah, I'd go all defense if I'm the Jets, man. Okay, moving on here. Next up, we got the Pittsburgh Steelers, James. We're getting close to the end of our list. The Steelers, their big need is quarterback after Big Ben is gone, offensive line, and cornerback on defense. I'm showing 28.8 million in cap space. Um, this one's interesting, man. I heard that they I heard that they were actually trying to get in on the Aaron Rodgers situation. If he was going to leave Green Bay, they wanted to get a piece of that action, which would have been pretty awesome. But it didn't happen. And so I've heard Jameis Winston is an option. Looks like Petra's got him listed here. Um, man, the quarterback thing, what do you do? I'm not a big fan of Jimmy G. He's like the best guy left, and you got to go trade for him.
He's not the best guy left. Jameis
Well,
Winston's the best guy left. He's coming off injury, but I think Jameis Winston's a better quarterback than
well,
Jimmy
we
G.
were we were we were talking about that earlier, and I guess I wasn't sure where you landed on it, but I was debating, how far off are those two guys when you got to trade for one and you got to pay him. The other guy you can just pay him.
Yeah, the concern with Jameis Winston is he going to be ready for the season? He did get injured, and it was pretty early in the season last year, and I forget the injury. He tore his ACL,
Yes.
and so that's a big concern with signing him. So you could probably get him a little bit cheaper than you would have. You get him on like a 2-year deal, and then you go out and you draft like a Malik Willis um, to be the quarterback of the future. Sits under Jameis for a year or two, and then next year
Okay.
and then the next year you have your next franchise quarterback. But Jameis Winston, I think, would be a great stopgap for them.
All right. Who else do you like?
Oh, you wanted more?
Well, all right. I mean, I'll give you, one of my thoughts is, you know, whatever they do, they're going to be in flux at quarterback. It's going to be somebody new. They spent a first round pick on Najee Harris. Get him,
Oh,
get him some offensive linemen, open up some running lanes because last year he had nothing to work with, man. And honestly, I think he was actually pretty successful considering how bad their offensive line was last year. You know, I know we've talked about Laken Tomlinson a lot. He's probably the best run blocking guy in this free agent class. Take a shot at him, get in on that action. Um, the other one is the guard from Chicago, Daniels.
mhm.
He could be a good pick to open up some running lanes. Um, I know at one point before you talked about Connor Williams, maybe him as an interior offensive lineman. Whatever it is,
Or like a Roger Saffold.
yeah, just open up some lanes. And, they probably need to go after a tackle as well because there's definitely more than one opening on that line. It's just, let's start with some guards. Let's put the focus on Najee Harris for this year while they figure out the quarterback situation, and then they can go from there.
That makes sense too. And but then what do you do at quarterback? Because you're like Mason Rudolph's not the guy. Uh, Dwayne Haskins.
I,
I
I
don't know I
yeah, I
don't know
mean,
much about him, but he's not a starter.
for me, I would, I like the idea of Jameis Winston and an understudy that you get in the draft. That's my opinion. I don't want to trade for Jimmy G and lose
No.
a draft pick when I don't think that the difference between him and Winston's that big. And like you said, Winston might even be better. Especially now that he's got a year under his belt with Sean Payton. Um,
2 years.
Thank you, 2 years. Yeah, so I'd go Winston, and I'd draft a guy. Um, yeah, and that's another reason to throw more than one dart on the offensive line. Get a solid guard for the run game, and get a solid tackle to keep your quarterback upright. And then, they also need cornerback help, but there's a lot of guys they could get at cornerback. I would just prioritize the offensive part first.
Makes sense.
Okay, last but not least here, James, we got the Tennessee Titans. And so for them, I'm showing offensive line, tight end, linebacker, and about 3.7 million in space. These guys are kind of in a tough situation, man. Like I would have liked to have seen them have some more cap space to play around with because they do have some needs, and I'm just not sure they're going to fill their needs to a satisfactory level, to be honest.
I agree with you. I think though, and there's somebody we haven't talked about. I'm surprised we have not talked about him, and I don't know how this person fell off our list when we were talking about tight ends.
Who's that?
Zach Ertz is a free agent.
Oh, yeah, it's because he's really down there now, isn't he? Let's
Yeah,
see. Yeah, he's like
uh,
88 on the list.
I have him at 61.
Okay, I'm looking at the NFL.com top
Yeah.
101. But either way,
So we haven't talked about him. I think every time I've scrolled looking for tight ends on my list because I didn't do mine by position properly. I kept going by him, but I think because it was kind of like a downish year for him last year. They could get him on like a cheaper 1 year prove it deal, and then go from there. And that would be maybe even be able to get it. That cap number's a little low, but get some stuff restructured a little bit and get a little bit of cap space, maybe like a
yeah.
$5 million contract for him for 1 year.
Yeah, I like that idea, man. Actually, I like that a lot. Zach Ertz in that offense. They need a tight end big time. All their guys are free agents. Um, and they've got AJ Brown. I don't know what's going on with Julio Jones. I think he's still under contract.
Yeah, I
But
think he has it.
but both those guys have injury concerns now. And so get Ertz in there, give him another weapon. And then I even like the idea of them bringing in Riley Reef. Put him at right tackle, you know, give him a little bit more help on that offensive line, man. They just what is it? They let Saffold go just this week, right? So
Yeah, it was they did, and it's I didn't do much of a dive into what a replacement for Saffold for them
I just
because
think Reef can come in and be serviceable at right tackle right away. And you know that Derrick Henry is going to be the guy. It's kind of similar to Pittsburgh. Make sure he's got his running lanes because that's going to be the focal point for Tennessee.
yeah, and Julio's under contract for the next 2 years.
Okay. Well, that's good, man. That's good. I mean, I hope he plays well. I like Tennessee a lot. I just, man, I don't know. They were underwhelming this past year, and the playoffs were just a disaster.
Yeah, and they kind of have him at like a reasonable-ish cap hit,
Yeah.
14 million this year. That's not bad.
Okay. Yeah, and I just called them underwhelming. That's probably not a good word for a 12-5 team, but they just they got the wins, but they did not look dominant, you
Hmm.
know. And for them bringing in Julio, I think I was expecting to see more out of that passing game than what we saw. And
Yeah.
and it just, and obviously the wheels fell off in the playoffs, which I think is an anomaly, but um
One thing that you gotta um remember is oh fuck, what's his first name? Henry got hurt this year and was out for most of
yeah.
the season.
Yeah, that
What's
affected
his
them big
first?
time.
What is his first name?
Derrick Henry.
Derrick Henry. Thank you. I was like
You must be
Mark,
getting tired, homie.
Travis.
Uh,
Oh no, I'm fucking losing it. I swear to God, like names are just escaping me.
well, we're in the off season and you've already slipped away. That's what's happened.
Yeah.
um, hey, it's all good, man. That's why we're a tag team here. All right, so James, that wraps it up unless you got anything else for the Titans.
I don't think so.
Okay, well, let's move it over. Let's do our question of the week. This is a fun one. I gave you a heads up this time. But so now that we know the fate of quarterbacks Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson, James, who do you think has a better 2022 season? And what I mean by that is not necessarily stats, but whose team do you think makes it farther in the playoffs and why? And so I'll kick it off because I always do give you a little bit of time to think. I'm going with Rodgers, and I think that long term, Russell Wilson in Denver is better because I think the salary cap situation is going to bite Green Bay in the ass, whether it's next year or the year after. I think Denver has a longer road to play around with, but I think that it's tough. There's an adjustment when you go to a new team. You got new coaches. Um, there's a lot in flux for Denver. Not to mention they're an extremely tough division, and so this could be a year where they got to get their feet under them and set up for the future. I think Russell Wilson's fully capable of making them competitive right off the bat, and they could make a good run. But I think Green Bay is more stable and consistent, and the NFC is weaker in general, which gives them a better chance of making that run into the playoffs, getting a win or two before maybe they get knocked out. And it's just an easier path, I guess. And so, um, but fuck, am I excited to see Russell Wilson in Denver, man? What do you think here, dude?
I this is not a cop out, but every point you just hit were the exact points I had on my list.
Damn, I shouldn't have stole your thunder. I gave you the question early this week, and I took it all away from you.
The
Sorry,
exact
man.
points. What it boiled down to for me is I sat down and looked at it, and Denver, yeah, Denver's going to make the playoffs this year. Denver's in the AFC is a fucking tough conference. I mean, you have Kansas City, you have Chargers that are up and coming, you have the Raiders who made the playoffs last year. That's just their division. Then you have the Bengals who
Fucking
made it to the Super
Buffalo.
Bowl. You have Buffalo. You
Yeah.
have
The
Tennessee.
Patriots are coming
The
back.
Patriots are coming
Yeah.
back.
It's a really fucking tough conference, dude.
It's a really fucking tough
Really
conference.
tough.
Then you look at the NFC, and you have, well, can't trust Arizona. Yeah, they're a good team for the first half of the season.
It's Green Bay and the Rams.
You have Green Bay, you have the Rams. Tampa Bay searching for a quarterback. New Orleans is searching for a quarterback. Carolina's searching for a quarterback. Like, who else? Maybe Dallas might be a challenge
Yeah,
in
but
in the
it's
NFC.
streaky. Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's Green Bay, the Los Angeles Rams, and
And maybe,
probably Dallas, man.
yeah, and maybe just because Rodgers can't seem to get past this team, maybe San Francisco.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Yeah, and they're
That's it.
remains to be seen based on their young quarterback that's going to
Right.
be getting a shot. So,
Right, exactly. But that's it in the NFC.
yeah.
You're talking about half the teams that make the playoffs in the NFC are actually legitimate teams. You're talking, what did I name? 10 teams in the AFC that are legitimate
Yeah.
teams out of fucking, what is there? 16?
Dude, I would love it if Denver won the Super Bowl, man. I mean, it would be man. I
If
like
they
Denver, dude.
See, the only way I saw Denver going further in the playoffs than Green Bay was if it just happened to luck out and their path to the Super Bowl, they didn't see the the Chiefs or Buffalo till the championship game.
Yeah, so it's like somehow the way it works out, like either Buffalo or Kansas City knocks each other out, and
Yeah,
yeah, and then they
that's
get like a matchup with like maybe New England, who maybe Mac Jones still isn't quite there yet, and so they can beat him with the quarterback play, and yeah, no, I could see something like that. Yeah, then they get to the championship game against either Buffalo or Kansas City potentially, and yeah, it's
and I
fuck
forgot
man,
to mention Tennessee.
yeah. And Tennessee, I
And
think is I think Denver could be better than Tennessee this year.
I think they could be, but that's still gonna. It's Tennessee puts it on at the end of the season generally. This past year
Yeah,
they didn't, but and Baltimore's gonna be back this year.
yeah, yeah.
And
Cincinnati, they should keep rising up. I mean,
I think
it's crazy.
I think the other three teams in the AFC South are the only teams I'm leaving off this list that are solid fucking
Yeah.
good teams.
And dude, the most fucked up part of it is that when we were doing our franchise tag shows these last 2 weeks, we were talking about how the AFC is sitting on all the cap space.
Yeah.
How does that happen? You're like by far and away the best conference, and you're sitting on all the money to spend. It's like the NFC has just squandered it, dude. Oh,
Well,
it's a
I think
shame.
what it boiled down to though is because the NFC was kept borrowing from future years caps.
Yep, yep. Yeah, I'm just it's such a imbalanced situation. It's blowing my mind, but
Yeah.
hey, that's all right. I mean, the NFC did win the Super Bowl, so they got that. All right, cool. Well, hey, so for anybody who's watching, similar to Name That Stadium, hit us up in the comments. Answer our question of the week. We want to hear from you guys. And so next week, James, we're going to be doing the same thing for the NFC. So we'll be doing our free agency matchmaker there. And yeah, we'll keep it rolling. That's all I got for tonight, man. You got any closing thoughts?
No, I think that's all I had.
Okay. Well, hey, anybody who's watching, we hope you like the show. These are always fun ones in the off season. You get to do some dreaming and some playing around and all that kind of cool stuff with your team. So we hope you'll like it. If you did, give us the thumbs up or the like on Facebook or whatever platform you're on. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. That shit helps us out big time. So, James, like always, man, it was a good time. I'll catch you later, man.
All right, have a good one.
Gridiron Grinder. Hut hut hike.